Well, I want to welcome everybody to the NMRA Division 5 meeting of the Lone Star region. And tonight we've got a special guest, Ralph Renzetti, to give a clinic for us today. He's going to talk about weathering and painting and probably some other, painting and modeling tips too. So I'm going to go through all of my stuff. We'll let him talk, and then I'll open the floor up to questions afterwards, and then we can sit here however long we want to, or however much time everybody has. Um, but I want to. I've got a few news items that have come from. I just got back from the NMRA National Convention in St. Louis, and NMRA's released a few things that they were working on. So, from what I understand, is Speed, that's the IT department, and a lot of other department heads are camped out in Gordy's room, working like overnight a couple times to implement some of these things. But coming up soon, I don't know much about it, but there's a new NMRA interchange that's coming up. That's going to be it's like an online virtual town hall to connect other NMRA members around the world, and it says from the website, it says with constant text messaging between NMRA members and the ability to jump into video enabled conference rooms anytime to connect the members around the world. They'll be starting to add members to the NMRA interchange in coming weeks with a global launch this fall. So that's all I have info on that. And actually, I think that came from their Facebook uh, page on that. So I'm hearing some other stuff, so I'm going to mute everybody here, and and then we'll that way I'll if you need have a question or something, just unmute yourself. Uh, and So the other thing that they announced on at the convention or started is the Women in Model Railroading Special Interest Group, and I got to sit in. They had a clinic and meeting about it, so they had Cynthia Priest. And a few other women, which I can't remember. One of them actually is on Instagram called the Train Couple. That was interesting because I think I was either following them or they followed me, and then I wound up seeing that they were there. So, and then Michelle Kempum is heading this up with the Colorado Railroad Museum in Greeley, Colorado. And she's actually going to be the presenter for next month's meeting here, going to tell us about the museum and everything. If you want to learn more, if your wife or spouse or anybody wants to get interested in model railroading, they can, and interested in this group, posted the link in the chat to the new special interest group, and it's got links on there and a link to sign up and everything. And for events coming up, the Austin area train show is August 27th, 28th, and the you can go to the website austintrainshow.org to learn more, and I'm going to post that link in the chat as well. So if you want to see where it is or interested in going. And finally, the latest piece of news I've got is the national convention for next year is going to be in Grapevine. Probably said that a few times. The 2023 Texas Express, and the news about it is registration is now open, and so you can go to 2023texasexpress.com and sign up there. And They have a special hotel rate. I think the rate is 179 per night. Includes all the resort fees, and you get free Wi-Fi, and then like a couple bottles of water per day. Tickets to the water park if you want to do that. So I had to man the booth, the registration booth, for 4 hours during the week, and so I had a bunch of questions people asked me, and one of them was parking rate, and I had to look that up. And what I could find online is the parking is $22 per day. That's I would say that's estimated because it could change at the convention, things still being out, that we may be able to get a special rate for convention goers on that. But uh, don't quote me on that. I'm just thinking that that's what I found online. So, but that's going to be a great convention. They've got tours of the BNSF Operations Center, the GE locomotive plant, and to name a few. And then, of course, there's tons of layouts up there to operate on that I've been on and operated on a lot too. So, but so with that, I would like to share. We'll get into doing the show and tell, and since I have the floor, I'm going to like to share the pictures that I took during the convention here. So, if I can pull up my sharing thing, and I should be seeing that now. So so here's me at this is going to be Martin Jenkins Clinic that apparently got canceled because he couldn't make it because he was in the hospital on that. But Ralph said before we started that seems to be doing better, and was talking to him the other day, so that's good to hear.
You should
And
send him that picture.
I
Send
did.
him that picture.
I did on Facebook. I was like, "Hey, I was here to meet you, and you weren't here." So, but I didn't get to straighten this picture out. But this was something new that they started. So, if you ever been to a previous convention, they had an operations roadshow that they'd come and set a bunch of modules up for, and so this was a N scale, a Fremo N layout, and they couple groups in the area got together with some modules and they put together this layout to do a timetable and train order operations on. And I got to take a few pictures of it. It's a few neat things that I think would be I'm interested in and maybe recreating for a Fremo module of my own. So I've been thinking I've got this same. I think I've got one of the single and the double Central Valley truss bridge kits that I've been thinking about trying to use. I thought this was neat. They actually had a helix in there, and I never really thought helix would be possible in Fremo. I've never seen it, but they did this. I think probably to adapt different heights of the different modules. Here's another bridge scene. It was cool how they had the prototype photo here below that, and this is looking down. I can't remember what this place was called. This is an interesting like switching. So the main line was here on the right side, and then this was two little spur tracks that went off that you could switch on. Went to a few clinics. This was James Regeer's clinic on lighting locomotives and buildings. He actually had two of them I went to. So I just took these photos for some reference for future. I also went to one on this is the only one I got for CTC operations. Guy was doing that. So here's Michelle and I. We had the Wednesday 8 a.m. to 12 a.m. shift manning the sign up booth at the for the registration desk. This is the Women in Model Railroading's group, and so since Christina Zambri couldn't make it, Gordy had to step in for her, and so I think he probably did a pretty good job. He's there holding it down and moderating the panel. So I was able to I signed my wife up to do a operating session on the layout up there, so that was very interesting. Here she is running a train. You might not be able to hear the audio on it, but just proof that she actually ran it. So, and I asked her if she was first time running and that there was no cornfield meet, so we were doing good. And so I got to do one prototype tour. This one actually turned out really cool. So I went to I was just signing up for tours, so I was late on picking them. So this was the last. I got the last ticket. This was Friday morning. So this company, in the description, it says that they refurbish and maintain private and rail passenger rail cars for class one railroads and a bunch of others. They'll refurbish them, maintain them. So this is the Gateway Rail Services, and I did have the pictures ordered. Later, I have a picture of their whole yard, which is actually when we came over the bridge going into it, I was pretty blown away with how many passenger cars were out there. So this was a Pullman heavyweight that they were actually the owner actually took us on a tour of everything, and there he was telling us about that this heavyweight was redone. They put different type trucks under it, and a lot of these passenger cars the trucks are built to match the frames of the car, and so you can't just like take a different style truck and stick it under there because it won't shim correctly. And then what their problem was is they weren't getting the 15-degree turning clearance that they needed to, that was required. And so they were here pulling the truck out and then reshimming it and getting it. They actually wound up. I might have a picture of it somewhere. Here's the owner here on the president here on the lower left hand corner. There, I've got some other pictures of them later, but they actually had some steel blocks welded in where the bolster pin is to actually jack the car up so they can get the turning clearance that they needed to do in there. So this was, I think, 1920 something. I don't remember exactly on that. There's a lot of rot here on the windowsills, so they're actually going through and rebuilding that. I didn't get a picture of they had a mock-up of the window frame, and it's all done out of mahogany. So they're actually rebuilding all that. Here's a picture of the truck from the end. There, more pictures of it. So, and here you can see the blocks that they're shimming the bolster pin down, so that way they can get these the sidebars to clear everything. This was actually out of I think an old Amtrak coach that was sitting in the next shop over. This is one of the older, and he was telling us how the different railroads have different couplers actually. And I really didn't know this, but I thought all the couplers were the same, So the railroads actually have different couplers too. And I think they said it was an older style coupler, so they were pulling it out and going to have to put a different one in there. They had four old Amtrak coaches, I think high levels, going up to I can't remember. It was somewhere up in Friends of something up in Chicago area, and they were going to, I think, pull in this with a steam locomotive or something. Yeah, I've slept since then and haven't. So anyway, here's the three of the four coaches here. One of them was still in the shop, so we actually got to go inside and walk around. It was dark. It was very dusty, pretty run down. It was like abandoned, like kind of like a ghost town. So this is actually, I've got an outside picture later. This is the Berlin sleeping car. This is a private rail car that actually is part of Private Rail Car Association owners, and I think this was anyway. I saw some pictures on there about sleep on a train, so I think you could spend the night on this and take it on excursions or something. I was in a room here and just decided to take pictures of this, and here's the outside of it on that. And they were in there doing some work on it. Doing some work on the trucks or something. He had said they had this jacked up. They got these portable jacks they wheel in to raise the car up. They were doing some work on the trucks. They lowered it back down, set it on there so we could tour it through there. So this was the kind of the special surprise that we got when we pulled up. I think this is the owner's personal private car, and so he had this hooked up to this GP7. This their yard switcher. And so anyway, he let us get in there, and he pulled us down the track and backed up and back down. And here's another passenger car that was stored in the tracks. And the tour guy said that he was going to give us like an hour-long tour and then just release us into the yard, and we could go take pictures of whatever vintage rail cars that were there. But yeah, the with the train ride and all that, it actually wound up pretty long. So, oh, and before we got to that part, I forgot we went to this is the truck shop. This is where they actually rebuild the trucks, and yeah. So what they're doing here is they're welding new wear plates on to the where the axles slide up and down, and this thing's upside down so they can make sure it's all trued up and square, and they'll put dye penetrant in there and inspect for any cracks around there, and then weld them up, and then they have a heat treat oven. They can actually heat treat these things on site. That's what this little base is down at the bottom. So they have a hood that actually drops over it, and they have a third party contractor that comes in and actually does the temperature monitoring and recording the temperature for the heat treat. And they can actually fit a 3-axle truck in there. And then here's a photo of just all the there's some 3-axle trucks back there, wheel sets, just miscellaneous parts everywhere. It's he said they have 20 acres in their yard there. So here's inside the car's called the Hollywood Beach, and they get probably used to run on the Seaboard Central, I'm betting, because there was a lot of Seaboard Central logos and things around. So it's pretty cool car to ride in. I think this is a video here, and let's see. Let's see if maybe I can get the audio in there. I may not be able to. Well, I don't want to might mess it up here. So here's let me get this to play. Here's going down the track. You can kind of see some of um, they're just using all these old passenger cars there for storage. He said a lot of their materials and stuff are stored in there. And this is a little long saw fast forward here, and just kind of some different angles. You can see here's one car that's just all tarped up. Nobody really asked about that, so I'm sure it's probably got where it leaks and things. And let's keep going. This was next to Union Pacific, like rail yard where they just stored cars and things like that. So this fenced here, that's the limit of his property, and so he also let 8 people ride in the locomotive, and I was lucky the tour guide had to have the job of picking the 8, except for when we actually got around to figuring out who was going to go. There's only 8 people raised their hands, so I was one of them, and so I got to ride in the cab here. Even though I was standing in the middle, I mean, it was still a pretty cool experience doing that. Kind of looking out the window here, and I'll straighten up here in a little bit. Yeah, I guess I probably. Oh, you know what I need to do? Sorry, I'm going to stop this and I know what I need to do to share computer audio. I think. Yeah, share sound. So maybe this will work. Yeah. I can hear my headphones now. There's that one car I took a picture of earlier. He said that it costs an average of $2 million to refurbish a car, and what they do is they bring it up to Amtrak standards. What they're doing. The first car he showed us, which I don't have any pictures of, they're actually building it as a crew car for a test. A test car it was going out with a geometry testing car. It's actually a set of 3 cars that they were putting together. So that was the first car he showed us, and it was really neat how they were laying it out inside and basically stripping it all down to the walls and rebuilding it up straight. And there's the breaker panel for the GP7 there, and there's after we got done, he was back in the locomotive, back into that storage track. Nope. That should be a video. Maybe I didn't get it in there. Anyway, there's a shot down the yard there. Some of the other cars that he's got in his inventory. And then here's, I know this is a video. There it goes. So you can see all the rail foamers out at this. Oh, touched my mouse, so. He was coming in hot. That bell was pretty loud, but I can't stand them that loud on my locomotives. And one of the funny things was the tour guide, the guy in the green hat right there. He said, "You could go wander the rail yard. We're going to give 3 blasts on the bus horn when it's time to return." So some of them wandered off. We're all just interested in standing in the shade. And the bus driver honked the horn, and it was pretty puny compared to the locomotive. So there's a giddy rail fan pose there. and so a few shots of the locomotive. Actually, now that I wrote on it, I thought I'm going to have to find a GP7 and model this locomotive. So I went around and took photos of it, took a few cool shots. There's the back end, and here's the overview of the rail yard. So he has all these passenger cars through here. So probably some pretty neat ones. I didn't walk around in there. It was at the end of the day. I was tired. I think I was all rail fanned out there. So anyway, some pictures of this on the bus back to the hotel. Try to get some pictures of the downtown. There's a new vendor there, or new that I think, because I've never heard of them before. It's Class 1 Model Works. This was at the train show over there. So I took some, always interested in like control panels on Fremo layout. So I took took a lot of Fremo pictures, but this is the HO one that they had. I'll go through these kind of quick. So, cause I got a lot of them. So these are cool. Actually, I thought this was neat. They had the keys on there. I've been thinking about the same kind of concept on, some modules whenever get to building some. I thought that was interesting how the water was red, but then they actually had I thought that was a mistake, but then there's actually a prototype picture there that showed the red water. So, that's pretty interesting modeling it. This was interesting. I thought this was just, like a newly plowed field somewhere. So I thought that was, I bet they used like a notch trowel or something like that to, like you spread grout to do that. And then this is actually Z scale. There was kind of some whimsical stuff there. More of that. This is I think just a regular NMRA standard module. Just a loop that was there. Another one beside that. Cool bridge scene with the water, and I like the striations in the rock right there on that modeling. This is cool how they included a Sanborn map, but I never really could figure out. I guess that this building right here in the middle is this one, but there was some people standing around it, so I never really got to study it much. This is a T-track setup, and every time I see T-track, I'm really impressed with some of the modeling. The little different scenes that they do. This one actually had a little, probably an Arduino with a little speed, measure the speed of the locomotive. So if you had the two locomotives, two trains passing each other racing by, you can measure the speed on it. This one is actually pretty neat. And if I got this should be the video. It's not really rail related other than there's tracks running in front, but I thought the modeling on this was impressive. And he's got a sound effect playing, or actually sound clip, if you can hear him, and lights up like different little vignettes through the thing. The trees are actually really nice looking. And then also I figured out there's a vendor there called Dwarven, and actually was the host for them on NMRAX when they presented it. But he does lighting through fiber optics. And I was on Dwarven's website, I think last night. I was looking at him, and I saw like a little picture from this module, and I was like, oh, I didn't realize that was all fiber optic lit. So that all those little lampposts are fiber optic and everything. So
number 4 lights up.
Yeah, I saw it. Yeah.
And then he's got another module over here I'll pan over to. That's the trench run in the Death Star. That was the one that I saw on that Darwin website. Was that one? A lot of work went into this thing and all the animation and everything. That's about done. And then there's the Lego setup, and I don't care what people think about Lego trains not being modeling, but I think it's impressive what they're able to create on here. I have a Lego train myself, but when I was a kid, I played with it a lot around the Christmas tree. But that was cool. They did the old ironclad ship, and got this actually there was a roller coaster actually running around this track back here. This even though it's segmented, but it was pretty cool how somebody actually built that ribbon rail train there. I thought this was pretty neat. Kind of reminded me of the Lego movies lately. The beach scene, that's all these brick to make that rock work there. And getting close to the end. There's some of the trains that were set up on and they actually have some steam locomotives too. Oh, and if you want to take a screenshot of this, so my dentist actually has these glasses, and they had the vendor was actually there, and I've been looking for these for a while, and I actually got to try on. They actually have some that you can actually fit over your glasses. This half frame one, and the radicals like move in and out, so you can adjust them, and it was really really nice. I mean, they are a little pricey, but probably one of the best ones.
The major question is how pricey?
Um, I think he was saying they were like, well, this one is. Yeah, I think this is just the LED kit, but I think there were like two between $200 and $300 is what I think is what he was saying on that. But I would say, I mean, if you're doing this for a lot, um, and I think these up here are prescription. He said they do prescription lenses in them, so. Yeah, you can see down here. There's additional cost. Yeah.
My dentist obviously got ripped off because when I asked her about them, she said they cost $1,200. I said, well, I guess that's out of my budget.
Right. Well, yeah. If you get like this one here, the 6X one's $1,000. So, of course, that's probably list price also too. So, I didn't really talk to him much. I had to get back to the shuttle bus to get over, but I just took the frames out. Maybe one of these days I can get a cool set of them. So, here's this guy's the sales guy that was there. If you want that, so and if you want it, just send me an email or a message, and I can email you those. So more pictures of downtown, and so my wife and I actually went to the zoo and the Union Station here. They actually, because all passenger service left in the 80s there, so they actually turned this into a just an entertainment venue. I took a picture of this because it's the LED screen. I thought it was really neat looking. I kept that in there just to show you. It's pretty impressive. This is like the entrance walking into the aquarium in there. And then they went in and kind of had it a train theme, and it was a little kind of hokey where they made the train fly and all that, but oh well. It was funny. And I was more interested in taking pictures of the building, so maybe I could model it someday. So I'm sure everybody thought I was weird and maybe I don't know, a terrorist or something looking at all the structure. But actually had this was dug out in one of the exhibit areas. That some of the lettering's worn off on that though. and of course I had to try to get all the detail shots of it. And there was some more. I found some more of them through it. It's pretty neat, all the open truss work, and the rest of it. They actually a lot of the roof is removed, but it's actually got supposed to. I think originally it had wood in between the higher arches up there, and it's all. I found it fascinating. All the little links, all the structures, all pinned together in links and everything, and got more of the columns, trusses. I'm thinking maybe I could, if I was crazy enough, I could do all this with photo etch, but it'll be a lot of doing. So here, more of the column. Another column I found in the lobby. I took a picture. This was one at a restaurant. I've seen this hex tile a lot in stations. So I took a picture of it, try to maybe recreate it in the bathroom I'm adding into my workshop. They had a Ferris wheel out there, so we went and rode that. Here's the upper view of the roof on one side of it. I think the structure I looked up 600 feet wide and almost 700 feet long, and it held 32 tracks. And I didn't get a picture, but they actually had the tracks where the original tracks were. Like they had tracks running through the pavement in there, just marking where they were. And then I'm thinking might have been commuter rail coming in here at some point, and this was an add-on there. I haven't really read the history yet on it. It's more detailed shots of like the columns work, and these are all private rail cars. I think they take out on special trips, like they do a Polar Express thing. Here's part of that. They actually just cut off some of that awning, just and interesting. They just left that one right there and plopped this Ferris wheel right in the middle there. I thought that was a neat shot coming down. And then I went and had to go rail fan all the passenger cars. They actually were really good looking shape. I'm sure they paid a pretty penny to have them all refurbished. More shots of the structure. They're just all sitting there. They weren't open. You couldn't go tour them, but I was really hoping to do that. But at least I got some outside shots. There's a observation car they had there. I like that paint scheme on it. Had a little switcher here in the back on that. There's this is that signal bridge that used to be out front. And I like how they had the letters up on the front there. Kind of a cool little weathering too, to recreate that. Here's a shot of one of the legs on it. So getting close to the end here. There's the tail end of the boat tail car. I thought it'd be a cool little thing to model. Some prototype pictures of that. So, and there we are. We walked out in the parking lot to get that picture. So, waiting for the Uber. So that's it. Anyway, so that's all I have to share. So I'm gonna open the floor if anybody has anything else to share, and then we'll get to our clinician. So sorry that took a little bit long, but if anybody has anything. If not, if you want to, we'll hold it to the end. So let's get to Ralph here. So I want to welcome Ralph Renzetti to the clinic tonight, or the meeting tonight. And he's if you haven't followed him on YouTube, or he's also you're involved with YouTube. Well, what used to be YouTube Model Builders,
right?
Now Model Railroading Live.
Yep.
And he's had his work featured on NMRAX, and then also you're part of. I also see you on the IPMS, which is the International Model.
Yep.
Plastic
I am a
Model
member.
Society. Yeah. So I watched that on on YouTube they post those videos up too, because I do interested in modeling other than railroading, but I think it can apply to both there. So anyway, without further ado, welcome the Mud-father Ralph Renzetti.
The Mud-father came from Model Railroading Live, the YouTube model builders.
Yeah.
They were trying to think of a name for me, and because I was always doing dirty rail cars and locomotives, somebody came up with the thought, oh, maybe we should call him the Mud-father, so it stuck. So here I am. All right, my modeling is all over the place, basically. Let me see if I can get this up and running. See that?
Yep. Yeah. So you see your screen.
Screen. Come on, go, go, go. Now it's going to act up on me. There we go. You got that?
Yep.
Okay, so as you can see, I do everything. If I'm doing or getting bored, well, maybe not bored, but tired of something and stressful on the railroad, I go off on tangents. I go all over the place. The Volkswagen bus was one of them. That's a 124 scale. The junkyard find. The UP engine is an N scale locomotive that I weathered for a gentleman in Baltimore. The Southern Pacific engine was done for Joe Fugate of Model Railroad Hobbyists. So I'm doing all kinds of stuff. I even do Star Wars stuff. So my mystery barn find, and this whole thing is done in 124 scale. And if you have any questions, instead of waiting till the end, if you want to ask them at the time, I have no problem with that, because it's fresh in your mind. You'll get the answers. I've developed some techniques from things that I've seen on YouTube where they don't give you explanations. And these doors, that's a technique. We'll get into it later, but I've got the whole process so that I can do it down as far as HO scale now. And there's a whole bunch of stuff to that. So, like I said, my modeling is all over the place. I started way back when building model cars back in the 60s. And I spent most of my youth doing that, cars and trucks, and I never, ever did anything from the instructions. I always did it my own way. The two vehicles you see on the bottom, I'll just step back a bit. I studied architecture and had to participate in art class as well. So when I have an idea in my head, I try and do a visual drawing of how I want it to turn out. So there's two vehicles. I love doing what if. So there's two vehicles done in 124 scale. The one on the right, the older one, is not quite finished yet, but the other one is. And the other one, I took that plus a 1940 Ford to the IPMS meet in Ohio. I guess it was 2009. And out of 3,000 models, I got an honorable mention. I mean, I thought that was great. I couldn't help, nice pat on the back. It was great. But I enjoy doing this stuff, not for the accolades, but just for the sheer enjoyment of doing it. And I will try anything. I'm not afraid to think outside the box. So there's the 40 Ford. The car down in the bottom left-hand corner is a Ferrari Mythos. There's a little story behind that. Up here in Toronto, we have a highway that splits our city east and west. And that highway is policed by the Toronto Police Force. The highway at the bottom and the highway at the top of the city is policed by the provincial police. So when I was a kid, there was always this story about the police have what they call an interceptor, and the interceptor was a Corvette. Well, I never got to see that, but I did see the interceptor when they went to a Camaro, fully blown, all the speeders, there's no way they're going to get away. And I thought, what if again? So here's the what if. It's a Ferrari Mythos with a radar machine on the back of the seat. The lights are on the back bumper where the air spoiler is, and it's fully wired and everything. Clipboard on the seat with a license plate on it. That was my idea of what if. What if they had the money to spend for a Ferrari? The 40 Ford, they never made a extended cab dual wheel axle. That was my what if. So the things that I look at are what can I use around the house to help me do my modeling? The bed of that truck is coffee stir sticks, the wooden stir sticks. And with a little bit, they're mounted on a sheet of styrene plastic and sanded to a nice smooth finish. And then, of course, the glazing of the lacquer and so on, and polishing it down. So now the barn find. It's a what if. I love doing dioramas. One of the things that I learned from, what the heck was his name? Shep Payne. He was famous for doing dioramas, and I think he worked out of Chicago. One of the things he was saying that when you do a diorama, never do your subject straight, perpendicular, or parallel to the front face of your diorama. Always put it on a little bit of an angle. It creates interest. So I do that. So the what if theory carried through from my model cars all the way through to my model railroading. Then there's also the story about, and you've probably all heard a story like this, where somebody's boasting about this fantastic find that they got, or somebody found in a barn this fantastic car or whatever. The story I remember when I was a kid, it was a Corvette, but somebody died in it, so nobody wanted it because it stank. But that's all the gold mine sort of thing comes out of the barn. So my barn, scratch built. I cut all my wood on my table saw in the garage. My 2-car garage is a wood shop. And I used cardboard underneath the wood, cardboard walls, and the wooden framework. And one of the little things that I also learned, and I used to work at a hobby store, and the boss was classified as a master modeler, not a model railroader, but a master modeler. And he did military stuff. But one of the things he pointed out to me was, when you have planks of wood, like you get basswood, where that we buy the planks and so on, and basically have no character to them. It's just a strip of wood. So now knots create character. Wood grain creates character. So you do all that you have to do to create the grain, but how do you do the knots? Well, in this model, I drilled some holes. Some went straight through, some went through on a 45 degree, so you got that elliptical shape. And I used a barbecue skewer. And I glued it into the hole, clipped it off with my clippers, and then sanded it down. The wood grain was done with a hacksaw blade. And as you're coming down the board, you just sort of twist the blade slightly, and it gives you that wiggly lines that you see in wood grain. Then, of course, the stain. I love hunter line stains. Now, the stain there, it doesn't look very dramatic, but in the finished product, it does. That was the finished color. The wood walls, well, it's cardboard, but I put basswood on the upper part of the stone, and the stone is just plaster castings that I glued in place on the cardboard, and basswood planking on the upper part of the walls. And because I was going to leave it at that, because this is the bay where the car is going to be, I thought, well, I don't need walls above that. But then I thought, you get thinking about it, oh, like this is not looking right. So you do all kinds of other things. So I went and I put the boards up. I went and collected a whole bunch of things to put in it. So these are, except for the oil drum, they're all 3D printed resin. Even the crate that's up on top, the Jack Daniels crate. And if you look real close, on the barrel, that's a Jack Daniels bottle as well. That was a pain in the butt to try and put the label on. That was decals. I ended up making a lot of stuff on my own. So the barrel, I could not find a barrel in 1/24 scale, so I made it myself. That barrel is weathered using the hairspray method and AK weathering pencils. The cooler is done with, it's first painted silver, which basically was the stainless steel, in the Alclad paint colors, stainless steel. So that's a lacquer. And then Tamiya red put on top. And within a half an hour of painting the red, you come back with a brush soaked in Windex. And the Windex starts to wear off the paint. And that's how you get the wear on the metal casing of the pop cooler. And
hey, Ralph,
yeah.
I got a question before you go on. The decals on the Coke and the Jack Daniels, did you print those yourself? How did you get those to put on there?
The Coke is actually painted on by hand on the cooler, but they are decals on the crates. I couldn't paint that small if I tried. And the same with the crates. So I went searching on the internet, found what I was looking for, and printed them out.
Cool.
And if you get the right decal paper, it's nice and thin. It doesn't show up on the edges. I mean, there's a whole bunch of tricks to putting decals on. I use Future Floor Finish to put the decal onto, because it's got a nice sort of a gloss sheen to it. And then when I'm finished, I put another coat of Future Floor Finish on, and that hides the edges of the decal. So that when you're done and you put your final coating of dull coat or whatever you want on it, the edges don't show. The barrel, the streak coming down was black enamel, thinned out, and then you drag it down with a damp brush of mineral spirits to drag it out. And of course, I painted the ring on the floor, and every time I paint it and go away, it sort of disappeared because it blended into the wood. So I had to keep doing it until it stayed. Once the enamel was dry, it didn't soak in anymore. So there's a close-up. So all the weathering on the crates is done by brush and weathering pencils. So the weathering pencils are watercolors, and if you wet the tip of the pencil, you get a nice blob of color that you can actually put on a brush and spread it, or you can put it right on the model and manipulate it on the model with the brush, a damp brush. I didn't have a block and tackle, so I had to make a block and tackle. So I did that. That's just some copper wire, some string that I had. Actually, that string is from, I have this great big honking roll of twine that my dad used to use when he used to make sausage. And that's how he tied the links. And it's beautiful stuff. It's nice cotton twine. And the hook that it's on is just a paper clip bent to shape and glued to the post. The chain, you can get chain anywhere, but it's the whole thing about doing stuff like this, it's all the details. The little details is what makes it. So because this is a spot that I thought would be like where a farmer would do a lot of work on his tractor or whatever, the beam has the corners rounded from the chain. A little bit of rust is formed on the beam itself. I tried to rust the chain, but it didn't want to hold, but it still serves the purpose. It does look okay. So the door that I was alluding to before, this technique is new to me, and I played around with this to get this to work just right. You see the door on the left is what the door would have looked like. I couldn't do it on that door because it's already put together. So I have a door that's been weathered and aged and so on that I can't do it to. I can't use it. So I had to do separate strips, board by board. And the whole trick to doing this is wax paper, Vaseline, and acrylic paint. And it's amazing. I could not figure, it took me probably 3 tries to get it right. But now I can produce this just about every time now. What you do is you prepare the board by coloring it, the dark color, which is the way the wood would go when it's old. And then you seal that. And once that's done, and of course you groove it, you put the wood grain on and so on, and then seal it. Then on a flat surface, and I have this round Lazy Susan type turntable that I taped wax paper to. So on the wax paper, I took some Vallejo paint. What do they call it? Model color paint. And I squirted it on and spread it out. And of course, water and wax paper is like water and oil. They don't want to mix. But if you keep at it, keep spreading it out, the paint will spread. And once you get it relatively spread out and it's nice and even, you come back to your board. Your board's been sealed, so you don't have to worry about anything soaking in anymore. You take some gloss clear and randomly touch the board with your brush and then put that face down on the wax paper and let it sit there. So the first time I did it and it came out the white. That's what you see in the middle. Then I thought, well, what would happen if I had a second coat of paint on this barn or whatever? So I tried with the blue, and I did the same thing on top of the white. I didn't have to do any more work to that except put the gloss randomly down the board, then on the wax paper where the paint is. And when it came off, that's the way it came off on the right. You can scratch it up a bit more. You can take an old toothbrush and just rub it because of the Vaseline the paint seems a little bit rubbery when you first take it off, and there's little edges that you have to get rid of. So a toothbrush works great. And that's how it looks on the bottom picture there with the padlock. And the padlock is made from a part sprue, where I took the plastic and I sort of flattened it out, and a staple shaped in a U for the shackle. The nail holes that you see on the board, I drilled holes, and I used telephone wire to put into the holes. And the telephone wire, by the way, works at HO scale as well, as long as it's not sticking out. And then I just touched it up with some rusty paint. I have a whole slew of different types of paints. I have oil paints, acrylic paints, watercolor paints, and I have what they call gouaches, which are watercolor paints in a tube like toothpaste. And that's what I use to do a lot of my weathering with. So all the distress is done with wire brushes. That's the other thing. If you don't want to use the hacksaw or whatever, the hacksaw blade, if you get what they call a card file, it's a wire brush with bristles that are about 1/4 inch long. And the card file is probably about 1.5 inches, 2 inches wide, 6 to 8 inches long, with a handle built in. And that works beautifully. Just don't use it on balsa wood. Basswood is fine. Don't use it on balsa wood. Just shred it to pieces. So there's some of the other details. Again, it's details, details, details. So up in the top left-hand corner, I made some paint cans, just with some plastic tubing, some telephone wire for handles. You went up and used my wife's, what do they call it? Not an inkjet printer, a laser printer, and printed out the labels, glued them on. It's Sherwin-Williams paint label. And then I was experimenting. That didn't stay like that. I cut a piece of 10 thou plastic the way I thought the paint would spill, and painted it the color of the paint I wanted, just to see what it would look like. And it worked. I liked it. So when you look on the bottom picture, you see the paintbrush, which again is scratch built. The aluminum tape around it is from the tape, the metal tape, the foil tape you use on furnace ducts and air conditioning ducts and things like that. Just for that, what do they call it? The metal furl around the bristle to hold it to the handle. On the upper shelf, in the lower picture, I literally painted the shelf. Once I got the shape I wanted, painted the shelf so it looked like it was dripping down. The paintbrush fell down onto the cooler. I made a funnel out of some aluminum foil, hung it on the wall. And you can see the Jack Daniels bottles. Now, just a quick question. Do you know why Jack Daniels make their bottles square? So that they don't roll off your dashboard. So again, it comes to crickets. Details, details, details. I had some old fenders sitting around, so I weathered them using a salt technique. The corrugated metal that you see up there was the side of a cookie container, the clear plastic. When you get stuff from Costco or anywhere that has the flat acetate packaging, save the flat part. That saw blade is the acetate. And in the picture where the corrugated metal is, just in the top right-hand corner of it, you'll see one of those two-man tree saws done the same way, flat acetate. And of course, the weathering is done. I use Tamiya colors quite a bit. That's where I get most of my browns and rusty colors from. That's my basis for the rust. It's linoleum deck brown, dark brown, and I forget what the other color is, but they're all in the same shade. One is lighter than the other, and so on. And I'll put them on unevenly. And then when you finish it, you come back with, I have oil paints that I will wash down. There's one of them, it's called yellow ochre, and it actually looks like fresh rust. And if you make a wash of it, you can get it to go right into the crevices, and it looks like real fresh rust. So the reveal, that's the car. Here's another technique you can use for doing loads on your flat cars and so on. That tarp that's on top of that car is a piece of tissue paper, like the stuff you blow your nose into, Kleenex. And what I did was I covered the car. I can kick myself in the rear end for this. I spent a month and a half finishing details in that car to make it prototypical, and then end up covering it with a tarpaulin so you can't see them. Go figure. Anyway, the car is wrapped in saran wrap, or I don't know another name for it. Saran wrap. The clear stuff you put on bowls and so on to preserve your food when you put it in the fridge. Then you wrap the tissue over the top, and with a 50-50 mix of glue, white glue, and water, you start painting it on the Kleenex. So there's about 3 or 4 coats of glue on that just to get it to a hard shell. Then I was able to take that tarp off because it doesn't wrap right around. It hangs straight down the sides. And you can see in the bottom right-hand corner, that red and blue, that's a little, like a clothes peg that I used to weight it down so it didn't look like it was falling the wrong way. And of course, once you've got it like this, you then have to trim it so that it looks like it's fallen to the floor properly. So after that's done, then you can paint it. Once it's dry, you can paint it. Of course, more details. We'll go over here. This hook, if anybody watched Back to the Future, this is the hook that they had on the car to catch the hydro wire when the lightning strike hit. I built a bird's nest in the corner of the rafter there. And because I grew up playing hockey all of my life, that was part of my growing up. That's the stick I used to use, a Hesper Micmac. So I made the stick, same way the sticks are made. I made the little Wally figure, and you can see the size of it compared to a regular pencil. But again, it's all small details. They make the story. So now this, we're getting near the end here. There's probably about 8 or 9, maybe more, movie or TV themes within this diorama. And I've depicted most of them in the license plates. And of course, in the top corner here over the door is Biff's detailing. So he was the Michael J. Fox's nemesis, um, but he started a detailing business. But the license plates, and we'll go one more. You'll see there's the minion. I have now made two minions, so there's two minions in the scene. I have a radiator on the floor. The hockey sticks in the corner, and a Star Wars Stormtrooper helmet in Wally's hands. So there's all the license plates that are up top. So Biff Tannen's Mercury was 6H96472. And then you had Gone in 60 Seconds, Adam 12. There's two Iron Mans up there, Stark 11 and Stark 4. Caddyshack, Psycho, Smokey and the Bandit, Miami Vice, and I forget what the other one is way over in the side. You can't read it. But those are the movie themes that and TV themes that are in this diorama. And it's funny to watch people try and figure out what the license plates are when they see it. So this is it. I use AK weathering pencils. You can find these things. I've done these clinics on the NMRA for the NMRAX. AK weathering pencils, chip paint and wax paper with Vaseline. Weathering wall signs, that's an interesting one that anybody can do. Workbench to mainline is the beginning of weathering rail cars. For those who don't want to get into it in great depth, it's a good beginning point. And then the salt and hairspray technique. So there we go, out of time. Now I noticed one of the guys on your site, I was going through your Facebook page, had a Morton Salt car. That's a Morton Salt car. Now, I don't like graffiti, even though I do. I started out doing transition era, and with all my weathering that I do, getting these large locomotives for people to weather, I started to like the big stuff. So I've progressed to modern day. I don't like graffiti, as I said, but if I'm going to do graffiti, I'm going to make it so that it's recognizable and unforgettable. So that's my attempt at doing graffiti.
That's very nice. I haven't seen that one yet.
I've done Bugs Bunny. Who's the Martian? I did a lot of the Warner Brothers stuff. Marvin the Martian, and Tasmanian Devil.
Cool. Well, I'm gonna open the floor up if anybody's got questions for Ralph. I always find his stuff fascinating, and I'm sure we'll have to have him on again sometime for, you know, I don't think you probably could learn. I'm sure there's endless amounts of knowledge there we can learn from him.
Well, if anybody's interested, at the bottom there, Weathering a Touch of Yesterday is my Facebook page. There's a lot of information there that I share. I'm not opposed to sharing my techniques. I've worked with some guys. I know the one train club that I went to when I was younger. The old guy that I got partnered up with would not share a thing. So I figured, well, once I learn or whatever I have, I'm not going to hold it back. I'm not going to be here forever, so I might as well pass it on.
Yeah. Yep.
So, no questions.
I guess not. I guess we're very talking a bunch. So, so
I don't have any questions, but it's very nice. Beautiful work.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's very impressive to watch that. I'm hoping someday I can get to the point where I can do some weathering and some get beyond my track work.
Well, see, that's the thing. I started a layout 10 years ago, and I still haven't finished it, or not even close to finish it, because my weathering has gotten in the way. And what can you do, you know? I'm working on it slowly but surely. But I was taught that if you're going to do a layout, get some track work down, make sure it's bulletproof, and then go about doing your plaster work or whatever you have to do, but don't do the whole thing in plaster. Stop, so that it's not completely all white, because you're going to get discouraged. Start doing like 2-foot sections at a time and finish them. Do them so that they're green and you're starting to place trees, and move along to the next section. And it makes it so much more enjoyable. That's what I learned.
That would also give you the opportunity to learn what works and what doesn't work. Because what works for you may not work for me, and I may not like the different technique, but I might find something else that works out great, that gives me the effect that I'm desiring. So I think there's, no one right way of doing it. I mean, certain things maybe, but, I think that's what, why we have clinics, and why there's so many people that have different clinics about the same subject,
Yep.
and we're all here to learn from each other too.
My only problem that I have is I see people go out and spend $200-300, sometimes more, for a locomotive or whatever, and then they'll go to the dollar store or to Hobby Lobby and buy the craft paint and weather their vehicles with that stuff. How can you do that? Like, why? Why would you spend that much money on a locomotive and then put this cheap crap on it? That's my only thing that bugs me.
Yeah. And the other thing too, a lot of, I always encourage people, if you go in the hobby store, there's usually segmented model railroading, and then you have your pan pastels and all that, but we won't get into that. And then, on the other side, you've got, scale modeling, RC, kind of all segmented. I always encourage, like, go take a look at that side of the store, and also, and not even just model or model stores, but on YouTube. I said earlier, I watch the IPMS.
Yep.
And and there's a few good guys out there, besides Ralph. And you mentioned the guy that at the hobby shop that you work for, and I think he's on YouTube. I've seen some of his work on there. Mike Rinaldi does oil paint rendering. I was watching that last week again, because I've got a bunch of oil paints. I want to try to weather some stuff, but it's I feel like that's something it's I'm like, I want to do it, but I'm I'm a little timid to start on it, and I just need to jump in and do it. But there's a lot of techniques in there. Night shift is another good one that I like to watch. You can take those techniques and apply them to model railroading too. So
can I share something else with you here?
Yeah. Should be able to.
If you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
Where'd it go?
And as far and something else that Ralph mentioned too, what with that diorama, he had all this stuff in there. What he's trying to do, what I've learned is what makes a diorama is the story, and you could apply that story not just to your scenes, but also even into your rolling stock and locomotive too, with weathering. Like if you look at a locomotive and it has like a burnt radiator grill on there or something, and be like, well, that caught fire or turbo, went out or something like that.
It's funny you mention that. That's just what I was going to share with you.
Okay. Well, I set you up good there then.
You did. What do they call it? A segue?
Yeah. Except it's maybe not on two wheels.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So that's a Canadian Pacific. It's an AC 4400, and it had a turbo fire. And that I've used just on this locomotive alone. I've used acrylic paint, enamel paint, oil paint, watercolors. So there's 4 different things on there in order to get that to show up like that. Plus graphite. That's the other side of it. I don't know if is that sharing?
Yeah. I see it. Yep.
Okay.
Are all the fuel stains and everything, is that something you just did that with oils, or did you use any of the special like AK products or anything?
No, you can do that with enamel paints.
Okay.
You thin them out, put on a little dab at the top, and with some mineral spirits, you just sort of drag it down. And if you don't like it, you just wash it off with mineral spirits and start again. The thing is, in order to do that sort of thing, you have to understand what happens with oil paint or oil. Oil on something that is dull, like a dull coat, it's going to want to spread. If it's on a gloss or a semi-gloss, it will go where you put it and it'll stay there. Because the surface tension won't let it go beyond the brush mark. Whereas with the dull finish, because it's so the matte, the mineral spirits tends to find all the crevices and follows it along. An oil drops on your garage floor from your car. Come back a week later, and that little one drop is now probably about 2 or 3 inches in diameter. So that's the way to look at it. So between each layer of what I do, I put a semi-gloss. If I'm using all these things, I have to put a semi-gloss finish on and then move on to the next product. I finish off with dull coat. Now this picture was taken before I took the masking off the windows. I forgot to do that. That's another thing. If you do anything to your models, everybody walks around with a cell phone. Photograph what you're doing, and the errors will jump out at you. When you're looking at the thing in person, you tend to see right past them. But when you put it in a photograph, they jump out at you. And I didn't notice it until I took the pictures that I didn't take the masking off the windows.
It probably allows you to get a different angle too. So you can get down low to it.
Yeah.
Whereas, we're looking at the 30,000 foot view.
There it is without. Now, these pictures, I take them on my back fence because I have a hydro field in the back. So there's no development in behind me.
Cool. If you do enamels over, so something I was doing just recently, I had a little brick wall, painted it with Vallejo paint. I did micromark clear on top of it, and I was going through with panel line washes trying to do all the mortar lines in there. Well, I did that, but I was a little uncareful, so I was trying to I thought I'll take Tamiya lacquer thinner because it's enamel. Go, wipe it off the
Yeah,
top. Well, the lacquer thinner went through the acrylic clear coat, just turned the whole thing into mud. So
goes
now
through
I've got to
everything.
strip it and right over. So I guess my question would be, so if you're going to do enamels, I know there's a certain order, like you shouldn't do, like
It,
there's sometimes you'll get a blisters on stuff, but what's a good clear coat that would resist to that?
acrylic clear coats.
Okay.
If you use dull coat, and this happened to me at a show in Ottawa. I had prepped that particular locomotive the night before. I dull coated it, and I was going to do AK weathering products on it as a demonstration. And as I was doing it, the mineral spirits that was in the product was starting to melt the dull coat, and it was starting to come down in balls of gum. So dull coat to me is the last thing I put on, unless I'm doing strictly everything acrylic or water-based.
Mm-hmm.
Then you can do dull coat in between. But other than that, it's acrylic clear coats, and I use Tamiya clear coats. You can get gloss clear, semi-gloss clear, and matte clear. You can get Vallejo. Vallejo also has a matte and a satin clear.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have I stay away from rattle cans. My when I use dull coat, I shoot it through an airbrush, and I get it in bottles like this. It's 1 3/4 ounces, and I mix this 50-50. And with this mixed 50-50, it goes 10 times further than the rattle can does. It's just something to think about.
Testers, I heard they were discontinuing, I guess, the Model Master line, but are they discontinuing the dull coat?
No, Model Master's gone. That's been gone for about 4 years now.
Okay.
I just bought 4 bottles of dull coat.
Okay, good.
And if you can't find it, we have a hobby shop up here called Sunward Hobbies, and he ships to the States.
Okay.
Of course, if you're buying in Canadian dollars, so that means your dollar is going to go 30% further. So you can it'll pay for the shipping. He has all kinds of stuff. But I use the dull coat extensively, and my Tamiya paints, I mix them 50-50 with 99% alcohol.
So what kind of airbrush do you use?
Kind of which?
Airbrush?
I have Badger. I have 3 Badgers, and I have an Iwata, and Sotar used to be on their own, but they're now owned by Badger. That's my detail brush. So I have 6 airbrushes. As a matter of fact, I just got an email today. USA Airbrush is having a 25% off sale right now.
Okay.
So I don't know what the 25% off is what's incorporated in that, but they're having a sale. USA Airbrush. And I've bought, they handle a lot of the Badger stuff. If you're looking at getting an airbrush, a starter brush, a good starter brush is going to run you, I don't know, somewhere from 80 to 110 bucks.
Yeah.
And the average one, or the one that I recommend, is the Patriot 105 Badger. You can get
I've got the Badger 150s because I do airbrush for work. I do taxidermy, so I use those a lot. But I was talking about for detail. I was wondering which one you used for.
So the one that you have, does it have the bottles on the bottom?
Yes, it's a siphon feed.
Okay, so all of the one I have a Badger 350.
Okay,
it's 40 years old and it's still going strong, and that has the siphon feed. The other airbrushes are gravity with dual action. And once
Okay.
you try a dual action brush,
Yeah.
you won't go back.
Yeah, I agree
Yeah.
with that completely. Both of mine are the 150s, they're dual action.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
I
And
love my Badger.
if you do order a airbrush from the USA Airbrush Supply.com, is that the right?
Yep.
Is that right? They're also a member of the partner program for the NMRA.
Oh,
So
I
if
didn't know
you,
that.
yeah, if you go enter, of course, you can find it on the website. If you log into the NMRA site, the code it says is NMRA, capitalized NMRA, capital B, Badger. So NMRA Badger 5, and it gives you additional 5% off.
Cool.
USA Airbrush Supply. So I guess they take a 40% off manufacturer retail price. So, or yeah, they take 40, so that'll give you a 45. And Badger will donate 5% of the purchase to the NMRA as well.
Well,
So
keep an
yeah.
eye out. Keep an eye out. If they have, you can sign up for their notification emails.
Mhm.
Every once in a while, Badger has a sale. And like 2 years ago, they had a birthday sale. Everything was 50% off because it was
Really?
50 years in service.
Or
So
it was,
I bought 3 brushes.
I think it was you'd buy every brush was $50 or something
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
So like you could get a $200 Sotar or all that for $50, and I think they had orders out the wazoo for that.
It took
took
2
them,
years to finish short
yeah.
sending them out.
And I watched a video online about Badger. They had a behind the scenes tour. I don't remember where it was, or it was on YouTube, and I don't remember where it was related, but it was very fascinating. The tour, and then just they had blocks of airbrushes sticking up,
Mhm.
in production. So it's amazing how many airbrushes they actually sell.
Oh, yeah.
It's a lot.
So I have an Iwata. I have an Iwata Revolution, and that's $120. You want to go the next level of Iwata, you're talking $150. And if you can find it on my Facebook page, there's one video there where the guy explains, and he's part of this. We call it the Styrene Syndicate model building, and he did a thing on airbrushes, on what to look for if you're a beginner. And his wife at one point went out and bought him was it Harder and Steinbeck,
Mm-hmm.
and she paid $375 for the airbrush. He hardly uses it. He uses a $100 brush most of the time. So just because it's more expensive doesn't mean it's a better brush.
Right.
Not always.
Yeah, I got one of those harder, the clips, the red ones, and I got it with the 0.15 needle, but I basically use it for just detail work. But I was cleaning it one day and bent the needle on it. So, but yeah, and I've got an Iwata Eclipse, which is like 120 or so.
Yeah,
That one's that's a nice one.
it is.
And I recently picked up a Neo from Hobby Lobby, and then I wound up buying the needle and the needle cap, all the parts to turn it. It was a 0.35, and I turned it into a 0.5
Okay.
brush. So
So 0.5 gives you a lot of coverage.
yeah, so you kind of use that for doing primers or some big stuff. So and it's really not. I mean, it's really not a bad brush either. I don't really find much difference between the Neo and the the clips. Probably the way it's balanced and everything.
Yep.
But
So there's my Iwata, and I have on the bottom of it a moisture trap. And the reason it's on here is because the one on the compressor doesn't really do the job that it's supposed to do. I was also in the refrigeration business, and just in going to school, you learn what happens with pressure and temperature and all that kind of stuff. Long story short, when you compress air, it heats up. When it heats up, it absorbs more moisture. So coming out of that cylinder head in the compressor, it's hot, wet air. The moisture trap is right on the end of it. And because it's still hot going through the moisture trap, it's not taking as much water out of it as it's supposed to. I've actually had a situation where I was draining this. It was also raining outside. I don't airbrush in the rain anymore because the moisture in the air is too high. But to have this at the brush stops the water from going through. Because what happens, it comes off the head, goes through the moisture trap there, and as it starts to come along the hose, it starts to cool off. And when it comes and cools off, it starts to condense inside the hose. And you have all these water droplets that end up in your paint, and it can ruin a paint job. So if you can, I know Badger makes a hose that has this about a foot away from the airbrush. So it's all that is it has the Schrader valve in it and a little chamber to catch the moisture. And then I use, because I have the different brushes that I'm constantly going back and forth, I have a quick connect on the end of it. So every one of my brushes has one of these on it. So if anybody has any questions on weathering or whatever, send me a friend request on Facebook. I'm willing to share. Like I said, I don't want to leave this earth and keep it all to myself. It's something that I enjoy seeing other people do well.
do you have a website also, or just a Facebook group? Page?
just the two Facebook pages. There's my personal one and the weathering one.
Yeah,
weathering touch of yesterday.
Touch of yesterday, yeah. So cool. Well, I want to appreciate everybody. I think we had some people drop out because it's getting late, but it's always great to hear learn things and stuff. So, and like I said, we'll have to have Ralph on again sometime soon. I'm always looking for clinicians and things, and I think he's got huge knowledge and experience to share with us. So before we go, I do want to make a few announcements. That I did start a Facebook group for the Division 5. Doesn't have much on it, but I'm going to start posting the meetings, all the past recorded meetings all the way from January. I think I've got January up there right now, so I'm going to do that. And I do want to also do a YouTube, so that way the members that aren't on Facebook can also see them on YouTube as well, so we don't I want all the members to be able to get the most out of their monthly investment with the NMRA. So does anybody else have anything to add before we end the meeting? All righty. Well, I appreciate everybody. The next meeting is going to be August sometime. I don't have that date in front of me, but just look at the newsletter. And by the way, just want to point out, I did post, if you aren't subscribed to the Division 5 email list, I did post the link to that in there. I know I usually get the Division 5 member report from the national every month, so I'd add that in. But if you're joining us, because I did post this on Facebook, a couple Facebook groups. So if you're not a member and want to keep joining us, you don't have to be a member of the NMRA, even though we do really encourage you to join, because there's a lot more benefits than just the meetings to take part of. Like I said, the discount program. You can go and attend cool conventions like I just did, and also other NMRA meetings as well. There's Division One hosts. There's every, I think, first or second Saturday of the month, and Division Three over in Dallas does theirs, I think, every third Saturday of the month as well. And then Robert, do you know if Division, is it 6 or 8 that where you're at? Don Wynn's group.
Division 6.
Okay. Are y'all? I think y'all are trying to do something with the ice cream socials that Froyland was doing, right?
Yeah, we have a quarterly social. We meet at a restaurant, have presentations. Froland has been broadcasting those on and recording them.
Yeah.
And then we also have in between those, we have a Zoom meetup where we just go around the room and talk about what we're working on.
Cool. Well, if you want to be a part of those are cool to be a part of too. I think reach out to Don Wynn or Froyland or Thomas, or if you need to get a hold of them, reach out to me too. Something else that I've got in my mind that I'm researching into is I want to have a way to connect just the division members together. I took a clinic at the nationals about getting people to connect, and there's another division using Groups.io to do that. So I started looking into that, and hopefully to set that up and let people, just as a discussion board for other people in the group, and then we can post announcements up there. Probably a little quicker to get out than doing the email blast. So, and also make sure everybody. Some people may not be getting them, maybe going to junk mail too. But anyway, I think that's all I've got for this meeting, and I want to appreciate Ralph for joining us again.
Thanks for having me.
And then the next one in September is going to be Michelle Kempema, and she's going to tell us about the Colorado Railroad Museum. I've seen her do this presentation a few times. It's impressive what this guy did in a short time, building this huge museum. So, and this massive layout that they have. So tune in, and like I said, subscribe to keep that. If you're joining on this meeting, same link for next. It's every third Monday at 7:30. So you could just bookmark this or save that link and join in. I appreciate having everybody in.